Experts estimate at least 2,000 serial killers are on the loose in America. And for every serial killer who has never been caught, there are many criminal investigations that are eventually solved. These are 5 real-life survival stories of horrifying encounters with the most evil serial killers the world has ever seen. As these scary stories show, even a fleeting glimpse into their criminal minds reveals a place of true horror. Number 5. In his confession interview, Ted Bundy talks about what it's like being the most notorious serial killer to have ever been caught. Ted Bundy made a mistake on the 15th of January, 1978, after claiming at least 30 lives. He went to a sorority house located in Florida State University. He got in through a broken lock on the door and ended the lives of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. But instead of fleeing, the serial killer kept walking until he encountered Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler. He then left the building, traveled a few blocks down the road, and encountered Cheryl Thomas. But unbeknownst to the serial killer, all 3 of them had harrowing survival stories. Ted Bundy only fled the sorority house because the headlights of an approaching car flooded the room with light. Nita Neary was getting dropped off by her boyfriend when she caught a glimpse of the serial killer and would testify at his trial. Kathy and Karen would go on to make full recoveries many months later, but Cheryl wasn't as lucky. Being a dance student at the time of the attack, Cheryl had dreams of becoming a ballet dancer. But after the most evil serial killer had dashed those possibilities, her story of survival ends with her teaching ballet to others. Bundy would finally be apprehended in February of 1978. After he was pulled over for driving a stolen car, he would be given capital punishment on the 24th of January, 1989. Number 4. At around 11 p.m. on the 13th of July, 1966, 9 female student nurses were sharing a house in Jeffrey Manor, Chicago, when a dangerous serial killer named Richard Speck broke into the building. Armed with a blade and a small caliber weapon, he calmly knocked on the bedroom door of one of the nurses, Corazon Amaral, and then ordered her and her fellow roommates out of their rooms. Convinced this was only a robbery, Corazon and 2 of the women, Merlita Garjulo and Valentina Pasion, hid from the serial killer in the closet. They were persuaded to come out by their fellow nurses. The criminal investigation would find that Speck then went on to lead each of the women one by one from the room to their demise. But it's believed that he lost count of how many people were in the building since he was under the influence. Though tied up with strips of fabric, Corazon managed to hide under a bed and remained undetected for the remainder of the ordeal. 6 in the morning was when she mustered up enough courage to seek assistance after loosening her ties and the ties of others. She walked up to one of the building's windows and started screaming for help, and a passerby contacted the Chicago Police Department, who immediately opened a criminal investigation. Corazon was able to provide a description of Speck, in particular his tattoo that read, quote, "Born to Raise Hell." Just days after carrying out his heinous crime, Speck was admitted to the Cook County Hospital after he attempted to end everything while staying at the Star Hotel. A doctor named Leroy Smith realized that Speck had the same tattoo that had been described in the newspaper, and after confronting him, Speck admitted that he was a serial killer. Smith contacted the police, and they asked Corazon to visit Speck's room while dressed in her uniform. She identified him as the serial killer, and he was placed under arrest. Speck's capital punishment sentence was overturned to life in prison. He would pass away in prison in December of 1991. Number 3. One of the most famous serial killers of all time, Jeffrey Dahmer, was active in America between 1978 and 1991, claiming the lives of 17 males. But on the 22nd of July, 1991, the serial killer made what he considers his worst mistake, one that would eventually lead to his dark downfall. He had met a man named Tracy Edwards, and after talking to him for a while, he invited him back to his apartment to keep him company while watching the popular horror movie The Exorcist. But Tracy became concerned when he noticed that Dahmer's demeanor had changed while they watched the movie, with the serial killer rocking back and forth and chanting under his breath during some of the more disturbing scenes. Dahmer listened to Tracy's heartbeat, after which he stated he intended to end Tracy's life in order to consume his heart. Dahmer attempted to handcuff him, but Tracy managed to fend him off and fled. Once outside, he managed to attract the attention of a passing police vehicle, and he led the officers to Dahmer's apartment, where it became clear that he was indeed a serial killer. Crime scene evidence showed that he had ended the lives of at least 11 men in his apartment, and Tracy was lucky to make it out alive to tell his survival story. The forensic investigation that followed was filled with true horror, as Dahmer had kept the remains of others in his apartment, some for years after. During a series of serial killer interviews, Jeffrey Dahmer made a criminal confession, and he was ultimately sentenced to 16 life terms. But after Tracy's survival, his life would take a dark turn. He was arrested on the 26th of July, 2011, after it was found that he himself had ended someone's life during an altercation in Milwaukee. Criminal investigators found the body of a homeless man who was found in a river below a bridge. Tracy pleaded guilty to throwing him over, and he was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison, as well as 2 years of extended supervision for the crime, having now become a killer himself. Number 2. Kayla Brown is the only target of notorious serial killer Todd Kohlhepp, who's able to tell her survival story after she was rescued from his property in South Carolina in November of 2016. Kayla and her boyfriend, Charles Carver, had been hired by Kohlhepp to clear brush from his property in August of that year. But shortly after accepting the job, they both inexplicably went missing. Charles's mother became concerned when she couldn't contact him, and she filed a missing person report. One of Charles's friends then started noticing strange activity on Charles's Facebook page, with posts stating that he and Kayla had gotten married, they had bought a house, and Kayla was pregnant. He suspected that the mysterious social media posts were being made by someone else, and he decided to contact the police. Little did he know that these messages would give a glimpse into the mind of a serial killer. During the criminal confession, detectives found messages between Kayla and Charles, in which they discussed the job at Kohlhepp's property. Their cell phone records also showed that they both had last used their phones in that area. Police investigators went to the property, where they found a crime scene. Inside of a shipping container, they found Kayla in chains. Panicking, she immediately told them her survival story about how she had been a missing person here for months. Kohlhepp had ended Charles's life. His car was discovered on the property. Next to the area where Charles was buried, police found another open grave. They assumed that Kohlhepp was planning to end her life within the next few days, despite telling Kayla that she was going to build a soundproofed house for the two of them to live in. Kohlhepp is believed to have possibly done this after having a slight argument with Charles. Later, he said it was due to an infatuation with Kayla. While many other lives were ended at his hand, Kayla remains the only one who's able to tell her real-life horror story, describing the scariest person she's ever known as a reptile in the truest sense of the word. Kohlhepp has pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences. Number 1. On May 13th, 1992, a woman would have an unbelievable encounter with the most evil serial killer named Tommy Lynn Sells. Fabienne Witherspoon, who was 19 at the time, noticed a homeless Tommy Lynn Sells as she walked past an overpass on her way to a friend's house. Since he was holding a sign that read "Will work for food," she decided to help him out, not knowing that she was about to survive a very scary situation. Tommy Lynn Sells accepted her offer to follow her to her friend's house. She asked him to wait outside while she collected food from the friend's pantry. but when she returned, she was shocked to find that he had let himself in. Blade in hand, he ordered her to a bathroom and then struck, but Fabienne repeatedly defended herself with a heavy ceramic duck until it shattered in her hand. He was now furious, but he had dropped the blade and now she had it. She got him multiple times with all of her might, but the last thing she remembered seeing was the serial killer grabbing a piano stool before she lost consciousness. Police arrived at the home sometime afterwards, and she received medical treatment. Meanwhile, the emergency care unit was where Tommy Lynn Sells was sent after his arrest. He would ultimately take a plea deal, and he was initially sentenced to 5 years, going on to become one of the most dangerous serial killers in history. Over the following 5 years, Sells would end 22 more lives, though it's suspected that the number could be much higher. The serial killer's capital sentence occurred on the 3rd of April 2014 at the Texas State Penitentiary located in Huntsville. Fabienne has since gone on to recount her survival story as a cautionary tale, and today she works as a nurse practitioner in Danville, Illinois. The brave survivor went on to become a mother of 3 children. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.